Story 1. We built a shelter in the woods and attracted something terrifying. A true story. This happened 5 days ago with me and my cousin, and it's a pretty long story. I live in South Carolina, and I live in a pretty nice house right in front of a tree line. It was a Friday, March 21st, and me and my cousin slept in the living room that night after planning out a camping trip for one day in the same forest that was in front of my house. I was the first to wake up at around 9:30 a.m. and woke my cousin up, and from there we packed up full of supplies for the day. We hiked into the woods, and the area we were in was extremely dense from a storm that passed through 6 months ago. There were trenches 5 feet wide and 5 feet down everywhere, and you couldn't even run because there were so many downed trees everywhere. We found a campsite eventually and decided to set up there, and over the span of the next 2 hours, we built a survival shelter complete with a roof and all. But we kept hearing these noises out maybe 50 feet away. It sounded like an axe going to a tree, and once in a while it would be water splashing around. We were getting paranoid, but we've been in these woods a million times and wrote it off since we were near a creek. Here's the scary part. I was adding the final touches to the roof of our shelter, and my cousin was adding the touches to the walls and whatnot. All of a sudden I hear a human sound, like they were calling a dog over to them. I immediately looked up, but I was calm. I knew that was probably a human, so I entered full protective mode over my cousin. He's a bit of a young one. I had him watch where the noises came from as I packed up our stuff. I let him lead the way out of the woods since he knew the way, and I didn't want the human behind us to get him first. Right as we were walking from our site, I looked one last time where the noise came from, and to my horror, I see a masked man, maybe 20 feet away, who looked like he was white in color. He had on all black, and believe me, I was terrified, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to scare myself or my cousin. I just told him to hurry. 30 minutes later, we were maybe 100 feet from the tree line, and I could barely see my house from there. In the corner of my eye, I see the same masked man running from tree to tree as if he was following us. I didn't say anything once again because I thought I was hallucinating, and I didn't want to work the two of us up. Once we finally broke the tree line, me and my cousin sprinted to my home and slammed the door shut behind us. That's when he told me he's seen the exact same man running from tree to tree. I will never go in them woods alone ever again, especially not in the area where this story happened. I promise it's true, and I teared up talking about it on here. I truly believe if I didn't hear that sound, we might be missing, or worse. We were 20 feet away from what was most likely death. I'm a security contractor, and this is the scariest thing I've seen in the woods. I'm a wilderness survival instructor and security contractor. A couple days ago, a student of mine and good friend who I had taken out into the woods before told me his dad just got 150 acres of land in a secluded, mountainous part of my state. It had a large amount of forest on it that hadn't been explored yet, as his dad was only building something for his horses that took up about 100 yards of the property, and his horses were free to roam at the moment. He said his dad got an insane deal on the property. My friend is now a dad of 3, and I know he doesn't get out into the woods that often. So I agreed to go with him because it seemed really fun, and I can imagine he needs a getaway every now and then. We are both indigenous, into cars, into wilderness survival, and all sorts of stuff, so we never run out of anything to talk about in the woods. His dad, however, told us that he didn't want anybody exploring the woods unless we had a gun. He said it was because he saw coyotes. Now, we're all indigenous here. We were raised in the same state. Coyotes don't actually attack people, really. My friend, who we'll call RC, also told me a while back when he was first at the property, he saw movement in the tree lines that was roughly human size and shape, but couldn't really tell since his eyesight isn't that good. I brought my AR and a small flint napping kit just for the fun of it, and we set off onto the property. We explored a lot of the rolling fields, creeks, multiple natural springs and ponds. Everything felt normal. It was beautiful landscape. Eventually, we decided to get to the forested part of the property as it hadn't been explored yet. As soon as we entered the tree line, the entire mood shifted. The forest had an ambiance of its own, very similar to the woods in the movie The Ritual. The woods were gray and dead silent, save for the occasional creaking of tall, tired cedar trees. There was a very small stream running through the center of it with sand that was black. It felt like we were surrounded, watched from all sides. It didn't take long before a very putrid stench hit our nostrils. It was the odor of rotting flesh. We decided to follow the smell and found the remains of 3 to 4 cows. We examined the exposed skulls and couldn't find any bullet holes. It didn't appear to me that these cows had been put down. Something killed them, though, and their bones were spread over about 30 yards. There were large indentions in the dirt all around them that were very vague in their shape. We decided to press on in the woods. Now we were accompanied only by silence, the putrid odor of death, and the sound of our own heartbeats. We kept stopping at the stream as I noticed several different types of tracks, large coyote tracks, and something else that was large but intentionally avoided the sand, it seemed. We pressed on into the woods until we started to find trees that had been bent over and pinned behind other trees while they were still alive, something that could never, ever happen naturally. We hiked on and found what I can only describe as a tool made of bone lying on the ground. It was extremely crude, but looked like some kind of scooping tool or knife. It was disturbing because although it looked primitive, it looked way more primitive than a person would make, but an intentionally shaped tool nonetheless. We hiked on until we found a clearing with a pond that had more large, oval tracks surrounding it. On the other side of the pond, we found a very strange little tree structure. It was in a frame. It had rocks placed up against it. However, it wasn't that sturdy, and the rocks were very peculiarly placed. We found no signs of any campfires around it. We found no camping trash. This isn't exactly a place you could hike to from a house. I photographed and made a video of the little hut thing. It was getting dark, so we decided we should head back. I had a flashlight on my AR, but I didn't want to rely on that, in the dark, with something that kills cows and makes tools out of their bones somewhere behind us. We made our way out of the forest and back to where the trucks were parked, just in time before it got too dark to see. As we were leaving, we saw something on top of one of the hills that we couldn't identify, but didn't stick around to find out what it was. It's worth mentioning the previous owner began construction of something on the property, abruptly halted construction, and left.